Well, the recent whistleblower disclosure from an ex-Twitter exec has cast a spotlight on the already scrutinized social media company. And now some cybersecurity experts are disputing the validity of those claims, saying the whistleblower himself may be the one to blame for these issues, not perhaps Twitter more broadly. We're joined by one of those critics. That's ESET Chief Cyber Threat Officer Tony Anscombe. Tony, thank you for being here. So obviously there's a lot of that we still don't know exactly about what went down at Twitter. We know what we've been reading about this particular whistleblower. So as someone in the business who does this sort of thing, what was sort of your first reaction in hearing about some of these allegations that the whistleblower was making?
Well, firstly, there's some very serious allegations in there about whether data is being encrypted, whether the company has patched servers, and we can come back to that, and whether they have those vulnerabilities sitting in there, and whether they're cyber resilient. And so some of those are kind of fundamental to every business in cybersecurity. But one thing I think is a takeaway is when somebody makes an allegation of this type, it's actually good for the user of that business, because if the allegations are unfounded, then the company are probably running around doing an audit anyway to make sure that they haven't got any weaknesses. And if they're founded, they're running around fixing those things. So actually, the end result is a good thing.
And so the end result still has larger implications for Twitter as well, in terms of some of the changes that they would need to make to the platform to make sure that these risks don't continue to run rampant. And it all comes at a time where they're also trying to go through this proceeding legally of a sale of the company too.
Yes, but if you look at the allegations, a lot of those are what I define back office allegations. So for example, the vulnerabilities to old server operating systems and not patching systems. What that means is installing the necessary security updates in a timely fashion, which of course leaves the network vulnerable. Those are things that are back office that don't really affect the user, the actual usage of Twitter. So those are maintenance features that need to happen behind the scenes. And having a good cyber resilience plan, etc., again, is a behind the scenes activity.
Is my account at risk?
Well, let's be clear, your account is at risk everywhere you have an account, because cyber attacks happen in every company. If the allegations are true, yes, there's probably an increased risk. However, I would say with that is Twitter is not a platform where we overshare lots of personal information. It's not like it's not a full social media play in that way. You're not sharing lots of information about your family, friends, etc. Typically, it's about a tweet. And if you're using Twitter as a messaging service, then I'd recommend using something else anyway. And for messaging, I'd use something that has auto delete and is encrypted peer-to-peer and stuff like that. So I wouldn't use Twitter for DMing in that way.
Tony, one of the other allegations that the whistleblower made is that there were international agents that were placed inside the company, specifically from India, is one of the allegations that he made. Now, if that in fact were true, and supposedly he tried to escalate his concerns about this within the company, but would he have any kind of other responsibility to report this to authorities, for example?
Well, I'm not a lawyer or a law enforcement expert here, but having that background of having worked for parts of the federal government, I would have assumed you'd know who to go report something like that to, especially when Twitter was very much in the middle of disinformation around some of the important things in the US, like the election process and stuff like that. So I think there's a responsibility that should have been reported at the time it was found out.
Really appreciate this perspective. ESET Chief Cyber Threat Officer Tony Anscombe, thanks so much. Appreciate it.